We are live. Welcome, everybody, to a new week in the Love Your Life Tribe. We are in the Sacral Chakra week. So, we are talking about our emotions and specifically anxiety. So, today we have a guest with us, Nicole. Nicole has her podcast on anxious and ambitious, which basically she has different people come on and talk about their anxiety and yet how they overcome and still be ambitious people. And I was lucky enough to be on one of her podcasts. So if you haven't checked it out, it is in this week's newsletter. So make sure you check that out. But thank you so much for coming and joining, especially last minute. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. I know that you get this question a lot as far as anxiety and everything, but can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your story as far as anxiety and what got you to get to where you are now as far as doing this podcast and being ambitious enough to start it?
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of my anxiety, I've been experiencing anxiety my whole life, really. I think I've really experienced it since I was a child, a baby. When my parents would leave me as an infant, I would strike a super high fever and then they would come back and I'm okay. So, that was in itself a form of anxiety. And where it really started to affect me was when I started to hit puberty and really those teenage years. It started to become quite debilitating in the sense that I was a high performer, a high achiever in school, in sports, except for it would cause me to have panic attacks and not even be able to attend the things that mattered to me. So for a long time, it really felt like something that was going to hold me back from achieving these big dreams that I have. And for a while, it actually made me not really even be as ambitious and not dream as big. I went through like the medical system, taking different medications, doing talk therapy. And while I found some relief through those routes, I really found most of my relief and healing through more alternative modalities. And when I learned that we were able to actually rewire the nervous system and heal this anxiety so that it's not just something you have to cope with, but something that you can transform and use it to propel you towards your ambitions instead of hold you back, I was like, I need to open up the conversation around this because there's way too much stigma around it when really it's something that we all go through. And particularly if you're a high achiever, if you're highly ambitious, you probably experience anxiety. So I wanted to really normalize that and show people a bit of a more holistic way to view their anxiety and move through it and achieve those ambitions. So yeah.
That's awesome. How many people here have anxiety or relate to feelings of anxiety? I know a lot of us, I know I do, and I know some of us on here that are on right now do. So, how many of you do have feelings of anxiety? And like, what do you do to cope? Um, or to basically overcome. And then at the same time, if you guys can put that in the comment section, Nicole, what do you do exactly? Like, what are some baby steps to go from, I have this feeling of anxiety. It is normal, but like, what do I do to overcome it?
Yeah, so I'd say there is quite a holistic range that you're going to have to look at, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things that could be causing your anxiety. And that's what I realized is that like your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, they are all intertwined. So you might be feeling anxious for a physical reason. Maybe you're not actually getting all the nutrients that you need. You could even just be dehydrated and that's causing like anxiety in the body that's sort of unexplained by thoughts, which for me was a little bit frustrating at times because it would be like, why are you anxious? And like, well, I don't know. I just have this feeling in my body. As well as really looking at like your spiritual alignment and are these things that I'm doing or these things that I'm ambitious about really actually aligned with who I am? Because oftentimes when we're out of alignment or we're trying to go on a path that's not really ours, we feel that like uncomfortability and discomfort. So really learning to distinguish like where the anxiety is coming from and then different tactics depending on the reason the anxiety is coming up.
It's a great tool to use as a map of where we are as far as how far are we from alignment? Are we far from alignment because there's a discord and there's a resistance? Or are we close to alignment because it's flowing and everything is, going great? And so there's that confusion sometimes of what is this feeling? I don't understand it. I was talking to somebody about labeling our emotions, and how when we label them, then we can start to like really peel the layers and see where is it coming from, because we get to look at that emotion and kind of bring it back up from wherever it is inside of us and be like, oh, like I don't need this emotion. It came from here, and this isn't me. What led you to go from that mindset that you had, right, in the beginning of letting anxiety kind of take over you, or so, to say, okay, I need to start this podcast and bring in people who, I know you said you wanted to talk about it, but what led you to a podcast
Hmm.
necessarily?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What led me to start the podcast particularly is I actually, as part of my work, I help to amplify other entrepreneurs and coaches to be amazing podcast guests.
Hmm.
So I was really listening to a ton of podcasts at the time. I was really into a lot of the entrepreneurial ones, but I found that there was oftentimes a divide of like either mental health focused or more like ambition, entrepreneurial focused. And I wanted to really like bridge that gap. So that was the inspiration behind starting it, as well as sort of having the platform to amplify these modalities that I have found so helpful. So, speaking with intuitive healers who have, helped me, as well as like I'm going to have on a guest who does emotion code, which has been really helpful for me. Um, yeah, it's so that I could really highlight those alternative modalities and hopefully help others as well.
So it's like you get to grow and learn as you also share at the same time, which is kind of the best of both worlds, just because we learn from our experiences and other people's experiences, versus just, not. Um,
Hmm.
I wanted to share with everybody that it's funny how we don't really know how people come into our lives, and it could be just like a simple picture that comes up randomly on our social media, but that's how we met. I was following all her pictures and kind of like liking a bunch of them, and then I was like, oh my god, I look like a stalker. So I messaged her and I was like, I know I just bombarded you with a bunch of hearts and a bunch of comments, but like I'm just really inspired by what she was um trying to put out there as far as empowerment, and that's what inspired me. So it's like, don't ever stop yourself from letting somebody know, hey, you inspire me, because that can lead a whole just path into like right now where we are, and supporting each other and you getting the word out. And there's always a reason, but it's funny how it got started because it was just like bombarding her with a bunch of likes on her social media. So you never know. So just always, share your gratitude if somebody inspires you, because it's good to know, right? Like it's good to
Yeah.
know that we inspire people.
And most of us, that's why we're doing it, right? So even if the person is like a really big star or something and you're afraid to reach out, oftentimes when you reach out with that sense of gratitude, they're not used to that. They're used to getting like just want people wanting things from them. So when you're able to give that warmth, it's like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm doing this thing. And that's how it felt for me. So thanks, Joanna.
Oh, yay. Yeah, I had to let everybody know. I was like, it's not just like sometimes it's random, but it's not. Like it's that something happened for a reason type. What has been your most exciting podcast so far as like, I know you shared a couple of different modalities, but like what is an aha moment for you that maybe somebody was talking to you and you just had an aha moment while they were talking?
Hmm, that's a good question. I feel like I've had so many aha moments. An episode that really comes to mind is my episode with you. I feel like a lot of the time, every time I'm like reading all your posts and everything, it was really aligned with what I'm thinking. So it was nice to actually have you on and talk about your view of anxiety and your view of ambition from a more holistic lens. Um, as well as I also, my most recent episode, I talked about a modality called Beyond Quantum Healing, which is a more spiritual type of hypnotherapy, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
where you explore like past lives, you explore your higher self, and that modality in particular has had a huge impact on my life. And for a long time, I was a little bit almost hesitant to towards talking about it, because from my story, I really went from like being a whole like not cold-hearted, but pretty much like atheist, not believing in anything, to having this more awakening. So being able to discuss that sort of spiritual side of anxiety and mental health was really big and impactful for me.
Michelle said, "My amazing friend does that BQH."
BQH, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's funny how when you start looking at modalities that we were maybe too anxious to look at before, we realize that those are just barriers or blockages from like getting to who we truly are and really understanding ourselves, and we're just kind of scared of the unknown, what's behind that door. Um, and I think that that anxiety kind of pushes us towards like it either we're opening it or we're not. You know what I mean? But like anxiety is like, okay, well, what are you gonna do about it? You're
Yeah.
gonna open the door and look, or are you not? Like you can't stay here. Um, and I love the fact that anxiety tells us so much, but let me tell you what I don't like and what bothers me. So I have this recurring dream, and it's not like the same dream, but it's this whole airport scenario. And I had it last night and I woke up sweating and I'm like, why does this keep coming up? And it's me missing um, a flight or going to the airport and not getting on the flight or something that has to do with the airport and me missing it. And this time around, I'm like crying to somebody like, don't make me late. Don't you know I have anxiety when it comes to the airport? And in real life, I don't, but it's always in my dreams. And now it's starting to get to, I'm realizing in my dreams, hey, don't you know I have an anxiety about dreams, like in my dreams while I'm in my dream. Um, and I don't get it. And I know that when I wake up and look it up, it all comes back to it's anxiety. So I'm like, well, show me then so I can fix it, and then it's still there. So this is like where we go into subconscious anxiety. There's anxiety up here and the tools we can use. But like you said, when you start breaking down those modalities of barriers and that go beyond the quantum, that's when you go, okay, there's something subconsciously here that we need to look at. And that's where I'm at. I'm like, okay, I need to do something because everything I've done, like, it's still not stopping these dreams. What do you think about dreams and anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that dreams are definitely a huge part of an anxiety. And if you have anxiety, you may often struggle with sleeping in general, right? So for me, at least that was the case, especially if I'm particularly anxious about something. It's like lying awake at night with that overthinking. And then if you're actually able to get into the dream, then oftentimes your dream does reflect that thing that you are anxious about. But I like that you touched on the fact that you have to really go in and do that subconscious healing, because I think sometimes we want to be able to break it down and be like, oh, well, like the airplane, that's a symbol for this. And, since you were stressed about getting on, then that's a symbol for this. And sometimes it's not really actually that clear cut. You have to do more of your own internal work and digging on it. So, like, for example, for me, something strange that caused my anxiety for a long time was actually the color red. And like, I'm wearing the color red. If you see my podcast art, it's red. It's like my brand color now. But
Yeah.
for a while, like, this color was actually triggering my anxiety. And I didn't even realize that until doing some more subconscious work to release that emotion that I had tied to the color red.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a puzzle, but the fact that we have these different modalities where you can communicate with your subconscious and like talk with your higher self, it's so powerful. Like, I wish I had known about it sooner.
Did you, so, I mean, not to get into your business about it, but
No.
so it's red, that triggered you. So then did you decide to like, once you figured out and became aware of that, did you decide to then embrace that color then to overcome that trigger? Or like
Yes.
why is everything red now?
That's such a good question. So, I mean, red, I sort of, I wanted to embody it after, because it went from being this place of almost weakness without me knowing that it was triggering anxiety, to this place of being able to represent power and like passion and come at my life from a place of passion instead of panic. So the red sort of has multiple meanings for me. But I see in the comments, like, one of the questions was the anxiety with the color red. Was it coming from a past life experience? And for me in particular, this was actually like an inherited emotion. So something bad had happened to my mom in a room that was the color red, and I was taking on that emotion myself. So she had felt unsafe in that red room, and now I was feeling unsafe if there was anything red in the environment. So using
Mm.
the emotion code modality is what we used to release that one in particular. But yeah, it was just fascinating to me that like something as simple as a color. And when I looked back and, thought about the times that I was more around that kind of color, like I played for a hockey team that was the color red. And that year, my anxiety was more through the roof. So
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of interesting.
That is so, so cool. And you know that what that reminds me of, I did this, I don't even know what it's called, so we're not even gonna give it a name, but I was in New York, doing this thing that I don't know. And I remember them telling me to look at the patterns of every single time I was in an argument. This is back when we were fighting a lot, my husband and I. And they were telling me to like explain each time, the argument happened and replay what was happening in the background, right? And we started seeing that the patterns had to do with a drive-through, with some type of food, right? And something else. And I started paying attention more when we would get in the drive-through, and then what would trigger things and what words were said and if it would start leading towards an argument or not. So it's like our subconscious starts to pick up the scenario of a trauma, right? Like you said in that room. And then every time there's something similar to that, it's like that trigger that goes straight into fighting. And I found it so interesting because I was like, what other patterns are there? And I started looking at, okay, well, when this happens, there's this. And so it was a way to make me become aware before it would happen so that I would stop it right there in its track.
Mm.
And this happens so much, like on a daily, that we don't even realize it. So I'm so glad that you mentioned the red because that's so simple and it's just a color, but yet it's has such a deep representation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for a lot of us, it's like this discussion of, okay, well, you feel anxious. Well, why do you feel anxious? Right. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's like, well, I don't know. Right. Like, for example, a lot of us feel anxious when we're in a situation that's like more confrontational or like even like a sales conversation or even something like this where you have to be recorded. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, why? Do you have a feeling of unsafety? And it's like, well, no, like I consciously realize that I'm fine, but you can't always consciously calm down your body in that way.
Mhm.
So being able to get into the body and work with the body to release those things that you may not even be aware of is like so powerful because then you don't have to just rely on the coping mechanisms of whether it be like numbing the anxiety or decreasing it or dealing with it when it comes up. You can actually prevent it from happening.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What would you say to those that feel like they're stuck or like they can't move because anxiety has basically taken over? So they feel like they have all these dreams and ambitions, but anxiety has them at a place where they feel stuck. What would you say would be the easiest way to kind of feel unstuck and begin to take the path towards their ambition?
That's a great question. So I think one of the biggest things for me was understanding that it wasn't me. So if you're feeling that anxiety and you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm too anxious, how am I going to do that thing? You are not anxious. You're just experiencing anxiety. So you may be stuck in what I like to think of it like a sky in the storm. So you may be stuck in a thunderstorm and everything feels like completely dark, uncontrollable, like there's no light. But when you can actually sit with it and allow it to pass, then you can get back to that place of clarity. So I'd say like one of the first things is just realizing that you're not broken, there's nothing missing, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just an emotion that you're currently sitting in. And like I've been there where it's like that doesn't feel like it, like this is my constant life, like waking up to panic attacks. However, it really is the truth that that is not you. It's just a state that's passing by. And starting to understand, like, when maybe if you experience that cloud in certain situations, like, when do I draw that cloud back in? And how can I allow it to pass more with ease instead of holding on to it and um, almost amplifying it?
Right, focusing so much on that that it becomes bigger. Um,
Mhm.
I had something I was about to say and I totally blanked out.
Me all the time. I
I
think
was
it's an
like, I had
anxiety
it.
thing.
I had
All the
it.
things going.
Um, man, no, because I was picturing, did you ever see the movie Soul, the Disney movie?
Yes.
How it becomes like the darkness, like she becomes so full of darkness that it just grows and grows, and so she can't really see clearly.
Mhm.
Um, that's what came in my mind and totally made me forget what I was saying. I was
Yeah, but
picturing that.
that's a beautiful image of it though. That's so true. And then when it overcomes you so much, it really does feel like it is you. But one of the biggest like quotes that really helped me was from Eckhart Tolle, who said, you know, at one point I realized I this isn't exactly how it goes, but at one point he realized I can't live with myself. And if I can't live with myself, then there must be a difference between me and myself. And
Mm,
so to me, I was like, wow, that's huge because for a long time, when I was stuck in that anxiety and like it's hard to live every day when you are feeling in that constant state of fight or flight type of
mm.
situation. You know, I was like, I'm stuck. Like, how can I live in this anxious body? And then I started to realize like that's not actually me. This is just something that I'm dealing with and it's serving me a purpose, right? Like your anxiety is always keeping you safe. Whether or not you feel like it is, it's always serving a purpose. So even if it seems like it's negative, at one point your body said this is a positive response and this is going to keep us safe. So going in and like actually rewiring it can help you experience so much more freedom, or at least it has for me.
Larry said, "Will this work with phobias also, like claustrophobic?"
That's a good question. Yeah. I would say that fear and anxiety are heavily intertwined. So if you have a phobia, I mean, a phobia is a fear of something. It's typically an irrational fear. So a lot of the time when you go to, let's say you're doing like a more cognitive appraisal of it, you may be like, well, I don't know why I'm afraid of being claustrophobic, but I have that overwhelming feeling. There may be, times where it originally got triggered in your life, potentially in past lives. There could be like generational trauma that's getting triggered. So yeah, I would say if you are experiencing phobias like claustrophobia, doing that type of subconscious work can probably help to release some of that fear and anxiety around that as well.
And anxiety also is looking at the future and not really being in the present moment. And that can happen to us at any moment because, our thoughts are just constantly like going there. And I was in the shower the other day and all of a sudden I'm thinking about this happening and my son driving and then like ending up in some ditch and then like I'm calling the police and all this and I'm like creating this story in my mind and I realize like what the am I doing? Like I don't want this to happen or manifest. I was like, let's switch something else. Let's focus. Everything's happy. Everything's great. And I'm like, I can change the thought process. But a lot of times this is what happens. And then the people aren't aware that they've done this so much on a daily of creating these anxiety like illusions, these what ifs in the future that are based on fears. And then that's what's causing that anxiety because we do it so much and on a daily. And it becomes unrecognizable. It's kind of like you don't really know you're unhealthy when you're unhealthy. It's like you don't know you're sick when you're sick. It's only when you get healthy that you realize, oh, wow, I was unhealthy. So it's kind of like that same feeling with the anxiety. Like if you're constantly feeling it, you don't really know that that's what it is until you're out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And for so many people, anxiety shows up in a lot of ways that they may not necessarily term it anxiety. Like for me, I actually did go into full out panic attacks, but that's really not the case for a lot of people, right? A lot of us have high functioning anxiety, and that can come up in various ways, like people pleasing. It can come up as overachieving, right? So if you are somebody who's really ambitious and always on the grind for the next thing, in a way that is a form of anxiety because you're so focused on the future, not really being in the present. So yeah, I think for so many of us, it becomes our natural state of being that it's important to take a step back and realize like, is this actually me? Am I acting from a place of alignment or is there something else at play here?
Yeah. And the thing that you were saying as far as why does it keep going away? And it goes back to and it's the same one that it keeps going away from me. It's about what you do. Like besides your podcast,
Mhm.
um, what you do on a daily, like your whatever. do you find yourself going back to that anxiety on like with what you do for a living or whatever? Do you find yourself constantly going back to that anxious place and then going, like seeing it on a different level? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for me, I would say like every time you take the next level up, or every time you make a big leap, or you're
Mm,
doing something new, then the anxiety resurfaces. So for me, I mean, in different ways, right? Because
mhm,
there's new triggers, and sometimes there's the same trigger coming back up in a different way. So you have to clear it again. So for me, prior to the work that I'm doing now, I was working as a recreation therapist within seniors' homes. And at the beginning of that job, like having 30 to 50 eyes on me as me being the leader, that caused me anxiety. But towards the end, it was my one of my favorite things to do. Like it definitely didn't cause me anxiety, just joy. So when I ended up leaving that, the first position that I took in the online world was as a high ticket closer. And doing these like high level sales conversations was spurring so much anxiety in me. Like I was sweating on the calls. Like it was ridiculous. I wasn't sleeping for days before. I was overthinking it all the way up until the call and then even on the call, so much so that I couldn't be present. And when you're not present, then you can't have a conversation. So, I mean, it's of
right.
course not conducive. So, I actually had to go and do hypnotherapy around it and clear some more of that subconscious work. And like, it's just amazing to me the speed at which that something like that can help. Whereas, like, talking through it never really provided me that much relief. Doing only like 3 sessions of something like hypnotherapy allowed me to clear it to the extent where like I was sleeping just fine, not even thinking about the sales call until like the appropriate time, like 15 minutes before to prepare. And for me, it was a difference between me being like, am I going to have to quit my job and go back to this more quote unquote easy life that I'm used to? Or am I going to be able to like do these big ambitious things? It was the difference between those two for me. So.
It's like a growth opportunity. The anxiety is like you're either gonna do it and grow or you're gonna stay stagnant. Is how I'm looking at it. It's like an opportunity for us to overcome. For us to just get out of that state of mind or emotion. Because yes, like you said, we're not our emotion. It's just an emotion, energy and motion that we need to navigate and get into alignment. So for everybody who's feeling anxious, who goes through these anxieties, who um, has these dreams, etc., you know that you're not alone, that this is part of our just makeup of our that's how we operate, and that we need to stop looking at it like it's a bad thing, because on the other side of it is our ambition. It's all of our dreams, our goals. It's just anxiety is kind of like an obstacle, really. Like, oh, do you really want it? Because I'm going to put anxiety here in front of it and just see if you want to get to it, really, and allow us to overcome that to get there. So I think that it's great that you're putting it together. The whole hey, you can be ambitious and have anxiety at the same time, because it really allows others to let go of, oh, okay, that feeling of I can't, and just feel like I am empowered and I can do these things that I want to do. Is there anything that you want to let everybody know as far as like, I don't know, your go to saying, or just what can I leave you guys with that will impact you?
Yeah, I mean, if you're somebody who's suffering with anxiety, I would say one of the main things that has helped me to realize is that when you're in that state of like anxiety and likewise ambition, this is a very headspace thing, right? Like it's of the crown chakra, the third eye chakra. You need to get down into your body. And so a lot of the time when we have that drive and we want to just do, it's really hard to do that, right? You're like, no, I want to set the goal. I need to make the schedule. I got to do the thing. But sometimes when you can come back down into that stillness and rest, that's where the most magic happens. So instead of
Mhm.
always just like chasing, remembering like that rest will reap the reward.
Yeah, because it'll magnetize the stuff to you. It'll That resting allows the stuff to come to you versus I feel like you're running on a treadmill trying to catch something that you're not going to catch if you're just constantly going in the wrong direction. But when you sit still, you allow everything to kind of come to you. I love that. And especially about being in your body, because a lot of us, I know some of us here like to be kind of up in our bodies or out of our bodies, I should say, and really need to get grounded. And so when you have that color red and you say, hey, go back to the body and feel it, it's like, look, get grounded is what you're saying. Like totally get grounded, feel safe in yourself, safe with that, security from the root chakra type, so that you don't have these fears and anxieties pop up. So yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And just to add on to that, like one of the cool things is that when you do bring all of that energy down on its way back up, it's like it's almost gets transmuted, right? Like in a way, it's going back through your solar plexus, back through your heart chakra, and it's coming back so much more alivened. So that instead of doing something from a place of like panic or fear, you can really do it from a place of like peace and passion and excitement. And in that way, turn the anxiety into something positive to help you achieve your ambitions instead
I
of
love that.
holding you back.
Alchemize your anxiety.
Ooh, I love that.
I
That's a good
love
hashtag.
it, right? Let's hashtag that, everyone. Alchemize anxiety. That
Mhm.
way it's like AA, we can remember, hey, we can turn this around and we can flip this lead to gold easily.
Yes.
So yes, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We're gonna have you on the Real Talk with KC&JOJO podcast coming up soon in October. So I can't wait for that. But thank you so much. I love that you're here. And guys, we'll put the links below for you to follow her. Start listening to her podcast. They're awesome. You get to meet a lot of different people from all walks of life. So go support her, follow her, etc. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Joanna.
Bye.